Let's get ready to rumble!
Hello and welcome to Netflix vs. Cinema, the podcast that this week has been... We've all been on the same page. We've been so much on the same page that we've all seen the same thing in the cinema. my name is Tosin. I am the host based up in the Midlands in the UK. And joining me as always on the Isle of Wight are Sharon.
Hello.
And Shaun.
Hiya.
Now, there's a variety of ways to listen to us. You can find us on or you might have found us on YouTube. You might have found us on your preferred podcast downloading thing. We're all on all those things. And if you found us on YouTube, you notice that Shaun at the moment has got a bit of a doozy in the background. So Shaun does this every week. He shows up with a film as his Zoom background because that's how we record this. We record this over Zoom. He shows up as with a film as his Zoom background, and we have to guess who the actors are in it and what the film is. And this one is if you are watching this on YouTube and you haven't seen the clip of the quiz where he gives us what the answer is, go find it. Because if you figured this film out and if you figured out who the actor on the left is, you have my utmost respect. Honestly. Honestly. So, this week, in what we usually do is we have cinema. We usually go to the cinema, and on a good week, we get to see about 3 different things in the cinema. And at home, we watch a couple of things, and then we weigh them up against each other, rate everything out of 5, take an average, and we say who has won this week. Has it been Netflix or has it been cinema? Now, this week, we're talking about all of us being on the same page. We all went to see The Suicide Squad. I believe so. And Shaun, in cinemas, you also managed to catch a Sparks documentary, which you have been waiting for a while, and you have been looking forward to for a while. And
yes.
I actually think that Edgar Wright might be one of these filmmakers that somehow seems to share a brain with you, Shaun.
I believe so. Yes. Yeah. Very much so. Yeah. I mean, I really do rate him quite highly.
Okay, all right. So we'll hear later on what it is you thought about that. But also on the other side is our home things. So the things that we see at home. And at home, I believe, Sharon, you saw... Or did you not see anything at home?
No, I have seen Summerland at home on Sky Cinema.
Summerland.
I'm sorry, my screen keeps locking, so when I'm not sure if you can hear me or not.
No, we can hear you. Okay, cool. So you saw Summerland.
Yes.
Summerland at home. And Shaun, you saw...
I saw a thing called Killer Man, but I'm not sure if I reviewed it before. I don't think I have, but...
I do not remember that.
No.
I do not remember that.
No, I don't remember.
I mean, it was one I watched again, actually. So that would, like I said, I see things and I forget them. But yeah, I didn't think I'd reviewed that, but it was one, so that bodes well, doesn't it? Yeah. So, and also, like I sent you the Zulu clips,
Yeah. Which I still have to put up onto our Facebook thing.
You would not believe. Yeah.
This is Shaun doing recreating the Battle of Rock's Drift with miniature figures.
Well, it just so happened that as I was flicking through, Zulu just happened to be on, and it was about I suppose it must have been a quarter of the way through, maybe a little bit longer. So it's one of those films. I'm really sorry. There's certain films that once you start watching, you have to finish watching. So So it was a case of I watched through that. And also, I do like my YouTube stuff now. And I watched a documentary called Midway, the Battle of Midway from the Japanese perspective, which was incredibly interesting.
All right. Okay, cool. Good stuff. Right. Because we try and do the whole thing where we balance things out and we have the same number of, we have films and we talk about things that we saw at home. So I reckon that we go Suicide Squad, Summerland, Sparks, then Kim's Convenience, which is what I saw at home. And Shaun, would it be going by what you said about Killer Man? Did I talk about it? I can't remember. So let's keep that order for another week, and we'll keep about the Battle of Midway because I'm actually interested to hear about that Battle of Midway from a Japanese perspective till next week.
Okay, cool. But, yeah, that makes sense. So we just do the 2.
Yeah. Just do the 2. Just do the 2 this week. So if we're gonna kick off, let's kick off with The Suicide Squad. let's kick off with The Suicide Squad. So this is a film, and if you listen to us for a while, you realize that when it comes to giving reviews, we all have a sort of like a different bent. I get really, really interested in the circumstances behind how the film was made. Sharon gets really interested in the history aspect of the film, and especially and the synopsis. Shaun just wants to give you the feels. Shaun just wants to give you the this made me feel angry. You won't like me when I'm angry. It's like Shaun just wants to give it. So for me, I find it really interesting because this is a DC movie, and the eagle-eyed amongst you would have noticed that there is already a film called Suicide Squad out there, and this is called The Suicide Squad. And we have spoken about in this podcast about how DC have messed up their films and how they've fallen flat on their face so many times trying to catch up to Marvel. And this film, The Suicide Squad, is directed by James Gunn, who directed the Guardians of the Galaxy films for Disney. He was fired from Disney for a while because somebody dug up some tweets that he wrote, like, I don't know, something like 10 years ago. And Disney were like, oh my God, get rid of him. And everybody was like, what the heck are you getting rid of him for? It was a way he said that he was a stupid young man. All that. So there was this campaign to get him rehired. And he did eventually get rehired. But before he got rehired, DC went, hang on a second, James Gunn is available. He made Guardians of the Galaxy into a great thing, and they grabbed him, and then DC hired him to write and direct a kind of reboot of the Suicide Squad, because the first Suicide Squad is a pretty universally panned film. Wouldn't you say so, Shaun?
Yeah, I'm a little bit more forgiving than most people, but I can understand why it's not liked.
Shaun, that's only because you watched it twice. And as we know, the second time you watch a film, you mellow.
I can mellow, yes.
So, Sharon, what are your recollections of the first Suicide Squad? Did you ever see it?
I remember seeing it, and I remember thinking this is going on for too long. And get on with it. They tend to be my sentiments for a lot of these films, where I tend to think, just get on with it. Stop faffing about with subplots and side plots and stringing out the sort of denouement at the end so that it lasts an hour. It's like, if you just get there, do that and then end the film.
Yeah.
So I remember thinking, just get on with it.
Okay, so now we're gonna get into our collective review of The Suicide Squad. And quick synopsis is essentially you have all these supervillains in the DC universe. They have been captured, they're in jail, and there's a woman called Amanda Waller who runs a sort of dark ops unit, and she grabs these supervillains, puts a bomb in their neck, and says, we're going to take you to a really, really, really dangerous mission, and if you do this mission, we'll give you like 10 years off your 20-year sentence or something like that. And so the film kicks off with Michael Rooker playing a character called Savant, who is in this jail, and then she comes and says, right, we got a mission for you. And you go through this whole heap of characters, and you see all of them. All going on this mission because they're trying to get time off their sentences, and they go on a mission that is essentially it's called the Suicide Squad because these are missions that you wouldn't send people on. Nobody would willingly agree to go on this mission because it's just so impossible to do. That is basically that's the synopsis that you'd say, and anything else that you'd say about that, you start getting into possible spoiler territory.
Yeah.
So, what did we think of this film?
Who do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
Shaun, you go.
Okay. Yeah, this film. I thought, obviously, it was like you say. It was quite interesting in being a reboot because basically the character was he called Black Flag Idris Elba? What's he called?
He was called Bloodsport.
Bloodsport. Yeah. Well, basically he was Deadshot, wasn't he? Basically, I think. I guess they didn't have the money to pay for Will Smith again.
I think after the first one, Will Smith didn't want to come back because the thing about this is that it's kind of a reboot, but it acknowledges that the first film exists.
Yeah.
Because you have some characters that show up, and they are obviously, like, for instance, you have Margot Robbie. Margot Robbie shows up as Harley Quinn. Jai Courtney shows up as Captain Boomerang. And obviously they know each other. They know each other from beforehand. They know Rick Flag. He shows up again. They know each other. So it's almost kind of... So my take on it is everybody who doesn't come back from the first film assume that they are dead. they've
Yeah.
they've died on a mission somewhere. But by this time, when you get here, the Suicide Squad has grown bigger. It's grown bigger. There's more people who they've captured, there's more people who they've co-opted into it. So, but how did you? What did you think of it?
Here we go. So yeah, I mean, it was the start. I thought it started off. I was like, ooh, wow, this is a bit of an odd one, but yeah, I mean, there was a bit of a payoff. I think I really like the character, the Weasel, for whatever reason. I've no idea why, but I find him quite intriguing. For some strange reason, it was just like, why are you there? It's just like a byproduct, you know.
It's like, what would you do? What would you do in a fight?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what did you? Oh, you know, you just want to come along, a bit like in Deadpool, I guess, with the chap who just turns up and they say, yeah,
you can come along, yeah.
So that was quite a good start, and then, I mean, for me, this film. It had moments, shall we say? So there was some good bits, and there was a few bits where I ummed and ahed, and then there was a few bits that I thought, okay, and I tried to be quite forgiving, and I thought, yeah, okay, I can see where this is going. There's a few interesting powers, which some of the Suicide Squad have got, which I found quite amusing. And really, it's taken me a little bit of time to digest it, but on the whole, I would say it was, I mean, I didn't dislike it. I didn't hate it. I wouldn't say I loved it, and I will say it had moments, and it did make me chuckle quite a lot.
Sharon, what did you think?
Yeah, I thought those things I liked that were in its favour. I thought, one, it just did not slack, did it? It kept going, and that's quite I like in these films. I didn't feel like there's any real padding in it. I thought they were like, okay, we'll go boom, 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 and so you did get this rapid fire action. So you never had one sequence that lasted too long that you're thinking, oh, just stop that bit and just go on with something else. And I like the fact that it did take you by surprise on several occasions where you suddenly went, oh, well, I didn't see that coming. And that's quite unusual. Where we are such frequent film goers, it's quite hard to be surprised often at these films because they normally signpost what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And when people say, I had no idea that was going to happen, you think, well, you're not watching the rest of the film then? How could you not see it coming? And so there's a few things in this I didn't see coming, which I thought, well, that's good. Didn't see that one coming. Some of the characters I found a little bit annoying, I have to say. And I just thought the humour, to me, was stretched in places. For my sense of humour, anyway. So I thought, there's some bits I thought were funny, but in other places I thought, no, you're just stretching this for the laughs, and I don't think it is that funny in the beginning. But I think it definitely had things in its favour. It was definitely entertaining. I definitely didn't feel bored or was conscious of the time passing, which for me is like the big thing. If you sat in the cinema thinking, how much longer is this going on for? It's not a good sign. Well, I didn't in this film. So it definitely had things in its favour. Definitely had a few things I was thinking, okay, that's probably meant to be really funny, but I didn't find it particularly funny.
Oh yeah. Okay. May I have a guess? I'm guessing some of it might have to do with the bickering between Bloodsport and the Peacemaker.
Yeah, some of that I just thought.
I agree. I see that one.
Yeah, you're just doing this odd couple thing, and I just thought, no, to me that's just, it falls a little bit flat. And I think some of the visual comedy, like I could only call it like in the video games, not that I've played any, but you get a big bad, and I just thought there's a visual comedy aspect to the big bad that I think again might have been stretched a little bit. But on the whole, I thought it sort of did its job really. It sort of was big, rash, and bold.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I thought, right, because this was James Gunn, and James Gunn has a very a kind of a sensibility that sometimes when he goes into the horror thing, I think it goes. Like for instance, there's a film he did called Slither that I can't. It's just no. It's too sort of like things crawling up my back. But but generally when he does his sensibility, I really loved this. I really love this. I thought that. I think the big thing is that he understood how silly this whole thing is, and that compared to the first one, where it was all kind of like, we're trying to be serious and everything like that. And the bit like there's a scene in the first one where Will Smith says the title of the film, and the way somebody put it is that you can see him die a little inside because it's trying to be all serious and trying to call something a Suicide Squad movie and trying to be all serious doesn't quite work. But this, he understood how silly it was. He brings in characters with this silly powers, and for me, King Shark. The fact that this film has King Shark, who is, if you have never met King Shark before, never heard of King Shark before, King Shark is a humanoid shark. So think a shark with legs. That is shark with legs and arms. That's King Shark.
Interesting who voiced him, wasn't it?
Yes, it was Stallone. So it was Stallone voicing King Shark. And King Shark is, because of the fact that this guy has directed both the Suicide Squad and the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, it's hard not to compare. And King Shark is pretty much the Groot. He is the Groot of this film. But imagine if you had Groot and Groot was constantly trying to eat his teammates. And I thought I loved King Shark. I thought King Shark was hilarious.
Yeah, King Shark was cool.
I thought it was hilarious. I thought John Cena was quite good as the Peacemaker. Personally, I quite liked him as the Peacemaker. And I think even the bad guy, the ultimate bad guy of this film, leans well into the weirdest, wackiest, dumbest, silliest things about DC. It's let me put it this way: it's in the trailer. So if anybody knows about DC and knows the term Starro, you would know what I'm talking about. Starro is somebody who it's kind of like, it's the kind of thing that I'm like, that's actually a very, very freaky idea. It's a very, very freaky idea. And the way they do it on the screen, it is freaky. But I thought, obviously, Margot Robbie, she is, I think, at the end of her career, Harley Quinn is going to be one of those things that stands out, that you say, yeah, Margot Robbie is Harley Quinn. It's like nobody else can play that role because she's made it her own, because she fits it like a glove. I personally really enjoyed this film. I thought it's like in a different stratosphere to the first film. It's in a totally different stratosphere, like a totally different film, and it's a different approach, different humor, different repartee between the characters and all that, and it works so much better. I personally would give this. Even the way they finally win the final battle, you look at that and you kind of go, within the confines of the film, yeah, that makes sense. That's probably about the only thing they could have done to take that thing down. I was just like that makes sense. And so yeah, I really, really liked it. I don't know what's going to happen with James Gunn going back to Marvel, what they're going to do, carry on with this. But I think he makes everybody look good in this film. And I personally would give it a 4 out of 5. But that's because I think a lot of the humor and stuff like that is right up my alley. So how many stars would you guys give it?
I'd give it a 3. I enjoyed it. I thought, it sort of did what it was supposed to do. It delivered, but to me, it didn't connect with me in that same way. I mean, I enjoyed it, but I would probably ask me in 6 months what it was about, and I'd go, oh. So yeah, to me, I enjoyed it. Yeah, it's fun. It was entertaining, but a 3 for me.
Sean, how many stars did you give it?
Okay, well, for me, I mean, it really had moments, and I did actually chuckle on quite a few occasions. Especially, should we just say, especially, Mother. If you just right. Okay, so I'm going to have to agree with you with this, Tosin. It had enough moments in there. I mean, there were a few bits, and there were a little bit, but on the whole, I'm going to have to go with you. It was a nice 4. You know what I mean when I say Mother.
I know.
I know what you mean.
I know exactly what you mean. I have to say, I think that this film might have one of the best your mum moments. your mum jokes ever. And I think I've often said that Idris Elba, when in films, there's many times I've wondered what is the big deal with him.
Yeah, I'm like that.
Yeah, I'm like, what is the big deal? Why is everybody going crazy about Idris Elba? But I think in this, and there's a couple of roles I think that fitted him well. In Hobbs and Shaw, the Fast and Furious movie, I thought that fitted him, and I thought this as well fitted him very, very well. Like I thought it worked really, really well. So everybody's on form. Love it. Give it 4 out of 5. Okay, we spent more than enough of that on the Suicide Squad. Well done, James Gunn. And now let us go on to Summerland. Sharon, tell us, what is Summerland about? What is this all?
Yes, I saw Summerland on Sky Cinema. It's a new it made last year. Well, I believe it was made last year, but originally released last year. It's a British film. Most of it is set during the Second World War, but it does flash back and it does move to. It sort of flashes back to the 1920s and moves forward to the 1970s. But most of the story is set during the Second World War. A woman who has been disappointed in a love affair in her youth decides to she's become isolated and distanced from everyone around her. So she has this small cottage, well, it's quite a big cottage, next to the sea in Kent. And one day at the beginning of the war, she's told, right, you're going to get an evacuee. And then she doesn't want this evacuee, and she has no intention of joining the WRVS or from doing anything the village wants. She's happily isolated in her own world. She writes books where she basically looks into the origins of folklore and finds out how does folklore originate. And so she's a serious writer, and then into her life comes this young boy. And it sounds like it's going to be quite a twee story from that, but then it sort of has some interesting sort of sharper edges to it. And the theme of Summerland is basically one of the myths she's exploring is how people see like these phantom islands. They're sailing up towards the coast, and on the horizon they can see land, and they head for it, and they often end up on rocks or they end up sinking. Yeah. And people have said it's like a phantom, it's like a mirage, and she's exploring the roots of this. And there's like a mirror mythology called Summerland, in which basically Summerland is the world around us. The dead inhabit the same world as we do, but they're like just behind a veil, and every now and then this veil parts and you see, and this other land is called Summerland, and then sometimes the clouds will part and you'll get a glimpse of another place that is the same as us but sort of slightly different, and it's where the dead go when they die.
Okay.
And so this story, it sort of mirrors the mythology, and it mirrors the story in their lives, sort of links in with this idea of a Summerland.
All right, cool. So what did you think of it?
I enjoyed it. It's the sort of thing I like. It sort of felt quite literary, and it was gentle. So the shocks were not brutal, but to me it does in the way that. So the Suicide Squad sort of spoke to you. This is a film that speaks to me. I like this sort of sensibility. I like the way it's filmed, and it's sort of immersed in nature, and it's immersed in sort of our culture, and it sort of nods back to the past in a sort of nostalgia, but not in such a sort of sentimental nostalgia. So I really liked it. It was starring Gemma Atherton.
Oh yeah.
And it had some sort of cameos from Amanda Root and Tom Courtenay and Gugu Mbatha-Raw. And it had some, I like it. To me, it's sort of the sort of film that I could sit down and watch any day of the week, and I would enjoy it. Not this particular film, but that style of film really is just up my alley, really.
It sounds like it has this sort of like basic sort of grounded English fantasy sort of feel about it. Yeah,
well, there's a hint of that where a few things happen, and you think, yes, it sort of draws on its own mythology, as it were. So I thought that it does. I did like those sort of aspects of it. It just appealed to my sensibility.
All right. So, and how many stars would you give it
So I would give this a 4. So I would, I enjoyed it. I couldn't find any real faults with it. I couldn't give it a 5 because I think again it isn't broadly popular. So for me, but it just speaks to me. So I would say I enjoyed this sort of film. I enjoy any film of this sort of ilk. I just can sink into it and really enjoy it. So to me, it's an easy 4.
All right, cool. Now, okay, is it anything more than a Sunday afternoon watch?
For anyone else, I'd probably call it, yes. I'd probably call it a Sunday afternoon watch for anyone. Yes, I didn't watch it on Sunday afternoon, but I would say it would fall into that category.
Yeah, because the way you're talking about it, like, you can fall into it. It so like envelops you and everything. I'm like, this sounds These sounds like the kind of things I would say about a Sunday afternoon watch.
Because that's set during the summertime, and some of the imagery is sort of about you see you see nature, and you see the wildlife, and you see other things. They sort of nod into it. it is one of those dreamy summer, has
Yeah.
that feel of it, of a Summerland, a summertime film. So yes, it's got that, and it's not high paced at all. Though there's moments of tension in it, but it's So it has that feel of probably a Sunday afternoon film.
Okay, cool, good stuff. All right, and now before we go for our usual halftime break, we have enough time for Shaun to go ahead and tell us about the Sparks documentary.
Documentary, yes.
Yeah, the Sparks documentary. I think it's officially called the Sparks Brothers.
The Sparks Brothers.
Okay, so before we do that, can you just tell me quickly, when did you first get into Sparks?
1974.
What did it for you?
Well, it was just like the probably the record they're most famous for is "This Town Ain't Big Enough for the Both of Us," and that was on top of the pop.
They're on top of the pops, yeah.
It's like, wow, have you seen this? This is like totally different. And so, I mean, loads of people watched it. Loads of people were like, wow, Sparks. And I mean, Kimono My House, the album that's on, I practically love that album. That's like got to be one of my top 5 albums of all time. Every track on it is just brilliant.
Okay, cool.
So anyway,
you just talking makes it sounds a little bit like when I heard Edgar Wright talking about this. So go ahead, Shaun. Tell us about the Sparks.
Yeah, I know Edgar Wright is like one of my favourite directors. So there's a bonus from the start. Anyway, so basically it's the story of Sparks, 2 brothers, and they tried this they were in America and they formed a band and it didn't go very, very well. So they decided that what they were going to do, they were going to go to Europe. So they cut the American musicians and they went to Europe, and they had a British backing group. They got some British musicians and they had the big hit, "This Town Ain't Big Enough for the Both of Us." They had 2 albums which were like mega, which was Kimono My House and Propaganda. Which obviously they spoke about because that was when they first became fairly big. And then there was a few wilderness times, and then they came back again with a few hits, and then they just sort of had like 75 albums. But so it's just basically all their careers. But what I loved about this, it was all the people. There were people on here that were talking about them that you wouldn't think of. There was actors like Mike Myers and yeah, and they were talking and loads of musicians. And something I didn't realise is a lot of people think Kraftwerk were the first, and loads of them say this, Kraftwerk were the first all synth band. But one of the records that come out, "Never Turn Your Back on Mother Earth," they had people from, they had like Martin Ware from Heaven 17, and they had the people from Duran Duran and all that, and saying this was such a big influence in the clubs. You know, the guy from Erasure, Vince Clarke, they were all like, this was just, everybody was dancing to "Never Turn Your Back." Like, and it was an all synth song. So it was everybody thinks Kraftwerk were the first synth band, but this is, and then obviously there was a little bit of a time they went into wilderness, and then they did another couple of albums. So there's a new audience each time. So from the start, there's like my generation, and then there was the synth pop generation, and then there's a whole new generation that are really enjoying them now. But all the way through, even the band members because they went through a few different
lineup changes.
Backup people. But they were taught, even the backup people and the producers, when they were produced, were still very, very much. There didn't seem to be any bitterness at all. You know, like there might be some, they went off and left us, but there's none of that. They were talking to all of them and saying, and it was really, at the end, they had a questions and answers. They had a questions and answers where live, so it was a live show with Edgar Wright and the Sparks brothers. And he said, one of the brothers said, "We just can't work. If we're not working together, we can't do it. We can't do it." But the one thing I must just go back. They were saying that their mother was absolutely wonderful. They had a nice sort of childhood, but their father died early. But their mother took them to see the Beatles all the way to Las Vegas in a beat up thing to see the Beatles. And it says, what mum would do that? You know what I mean? And they were animated sequence. So there were some animated sequences in it. But it was, it was terrific. It was absolutely terrific. And I mean, even if you don't know Sparks, if you watch this, you would know them and you'd think, yeah, we know that. I think with the new generation, they did a collaboration album with Franz Ferdinand. But you must have heard of Franz Ferdinand.
Yeah, Franz Ferdinand, yeah.
So
Take me out.
That's it. It's better in the matinee. Yeah. So anyway, So there was, and it was quite busy. I thought I was going to be like the only one. I thought can't be many people that like Sparks. But do you know who was in there? Who's from the cinema? Did the quizzes at the Novo and also used to do them. Sharon, I forget his name.
Oh, Dan.
Dan, yeah, Dan was there.
Dan was there.
Dan was there with his dad and a couple of other people.
So for anybody who's wondering why we're talking about Dan, like, you know, he's this celebrity or anything like that, Dan ran the film quiz where we all met. Dan used to run the film quiz. Yeah. I think we haven't seen him for a while, especially with COVID and all that kind of stuff. But it's, Dan, good stuff.
So Dan was there with his dad, and he said, and we came out after the film was coming out, we were sat there chatting and that, and we were bursting into song, and I did a song called here they were like, and he's going, yeah, that's great. So he was like, we were there just like really totally reminiscing, and then Dan
so you guys went to watch the documentary, and then the foyer of the cinema turned into a Sparks musical.
It did. It totally. So I mean, it was a really, really good, terrific evening. So I mean, I'll have to give this one a 5, just purely. It was just pure pleasure. It was just pure fun, pure pleasure. Nice to see people, and absolutely, 5-star.
You see, the funny thing is like, you were talking about their mum there, and I just thought, in contrast to the other mum that we spoken about on the show.
The Suicide Squad.
In contrast to the Suicide Squad mum. So, all right, cool. So good stuff. And you said that you reckon that even so. So you watched it and you loved it as a fan. So let's say someone like me who'd never really heard about Sparks before this, do you think I would watch it and then begin to get the idea of why this is such a big deal?
I really, really do. And they said in the question time afterwards, they said we would only let Edgar Wright do this because they didn't want like their life story that was more to do with the music. You know, obviously they had the early bits, but they didn't want to go into their private lives. There was none of going into their private lives. It was just, there was not much about the personal life in it. There wasn't anything about, it was just their early life, with their mother, but there was nothing about poverty or what they're doing. It was just a picture of them saying their mother was really good when their father died and took them to see the Beatles on a couple of occasions in this silly Italian combi thing that they drove all the way to Las Vegas in. And she said, how many mums would do that, And he said that's when they decided they wanted. But what was really interesting is they said they just can't work without each other. They just can't work. They can't work without each other.
Yeah.
They have to work together. So
that's quite the Gallagher brothers then.
No, not quite. No. Probably the other, totally opposite of the Gallagher brothers. But and I think even if you didn't really know them, it's a watchable because there's so many actors and other musicians in there. You got people from, famous, just incredibly famous people that are just saying what influence they had on them, and it was great, So
cool. All right, good stuff. And now we go to our final thing this week, and that is going back to Netflix. And this is Kim's Convenience, and this is actually on Netflix. I actually saw this on Netflix, and I'm doing my usual thing where I'll spend the last couple of weeks watching something all the way through, and I'm going to review the entire show in its entirety. So we're talking 5 seasons.
Wow.
But we're talking 5 seasons of Kim's Convenience is what I'm going to review now.
I've never heard of it.
Well, that was going to be for a couple of reasons. Most likely because it is Canadian. And,
okay.
Yeah, and as we know, in very many ways, Canada is almost kind of seen as like, America's more polite, quieter cousin that doesn't make a big deal about itself. But Kim's Convenience, it sort of like was notable for being the first show on Canadian TV that had that its main cast was entirely Asian. So because it's the whole idea is that it's a Korean family and they live in Toronto. So the parents immigrated to Toronto ages ago. They had their kids in Toronto, so the kids are Canadian but Korean, and it's all about what they do. Where they have a corner shop, or what we call it over here, a convenience store in America or in Canada, and it's all about just what happens with them. This was based on a play written by a guy called Ins Choi, who himself immigrated to Canada from Korea when he was a kid. So he kind of like has only really known Canada, But then later on in his life, he started connecting back with his Korean heritage, and he wrote a play that was all about this fight between the different generations, the appa and amma who run the store, and the son Jung, who is estranged from the family, and the daughter Janet, who is kind of like, seen as the good daughter and all that. And they've made a documentary or comedy about this, a comedy series about this, and it's set mainly in British parlance. It has some similarities to something like Open All Hours, with when you had because it's all set in this store. It's all set in this store, and it's about people coming through the store, and you have like a regular list of characters who come through the store and all that. And some of the things are about the Korean dad trying to figure out how to bond with his children, or trying to figure out why the world is different. They have there's some of the supporting characters I love, because this is a show that it says things about race and says things about the immigrant experience, and it's really, really rooted in the immigrant experience of coming from one place and going to another place. And a lot of the supporting characters, there's a guy called Mr. Chin, who is he's the owner of the local Chinese they just say business. They never say exactly what business he does, but he's always coming in and talking about his dog because he doesn't have a relationship and all that. And you have Mr. Mehta, who is the Indian owner of the local restaurant, and he comes and he's good friends with Mr. Kim, and they bond over the fact that they are both immigrants and all that. And they each episode starts off with this sort of little vignette before the main story actually kicks off. And there's one great one that they're talking about how, see, look, we both came to Toronto looking for a better life, but now India's doing well and Korea has Samsung and all this kind of stuff. It's like, oh, we could have been in at the ground up. But no, we're happy being Canadian. We're happy being Canadian and all that. And it's really good. The first episode sort of sets out a stall because it's all about pride. Pride is happening, and Mr. Kim is trying to he doesn't worry. He doesn't care about whether people are homosexual or not. All he's worried about is the noise that's going to come and chase away customers and all that kind of stuff. And so it stars it's the whole Canadian people, and you would not have heard of many of them. However, one of them you're going to hear a lot about soon, because Simu Liu, who plays the son Jung, he is going to be Shang-Chi in the Marvel movie.
Oh right, yes, I saw the poster for that in the cinema.
Yeah, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And with my whole thing of what's going on behind the scenes, because it's ended after the 5th season, and it's ended in some sort of acrimonious circumstances, because the cast were like, we didn't know it was ending. When we filmed the final episode, we did not know that was the final episode.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so
that's not good.
Yeah, so the cast are a bit annoyed about it. They say that the creator hasn't really spoken to him. But reading between the lines, I can see that what happened is you had this Korean guy who was running a show that was celebrated as being the first show to have a majority Asian cast on Canadian television. But watching the seasons, you can see that they were running out of ideas. I think by the time it got to season 5, I honestly think that they were running out of ideas.
Right.
And reading,
you don't want to become caricatures, do you? Because think, that's just
yeah, exactly. And I think because it was based on a play, so it was based on an hour and a half play, and they managed to get 5 seasons out of this hour and a half play. So, and reading reading the storyline of the play, reading the plot of the play, you can see that they have taken elements of that and they've spread the elements of the play, like the dramatic points that it hits, over the different seasons. And I think he essentially just got to the point where he was like, I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
I genuinely think, even though it was successful, I think he got to the point where he was, I don't know what else to do, and he wanted a break to go away. The problem is they hadn't. And this is something that personally for me, it's kind of like when you talk about representation, because everybody was like, yay. But when you read through the crew list, he's pretty much the only Korean name. So it was kind of like he was the Korean guy in charge of everything, but everybody else was Caucasian.
Oh, right.
Everybody else behind the scenes making this show was Caucasian. So when he left, they didn't have somebody who could take over. And then, so they were left, I think the network was left in a situation where they were going to be like, yeah, this is the show that has a totally Asian cast, and we have a whole bunch of white people deciding what they say and telling them what to do. So I think the network went, if he leaves, we can't do this show, because they hadn't taken the time to raise other people in. So and so everybody keeps talking about there's lessons learned and all that, and I'm like, yeah, this is the lesson that you've learned. Next time when you have something like this, make sure that it's being done behind the scenes and you're building up everybody and because if not, because now you've lost a good show because somebody else might have had different ideas. There's things that they do at the end of the 4th season, especially with the character of Janet, the daughter, where I'm like, they are flailing about for ideas. They are totally flailing about for ideas. It's like, when you have a will day, won't day couple in a show. Yeah. They do this will day, one day thing with her for a while that just disappears. And then out of nowhere, there's a they will. And you're like, what? That makes no sense. That makes no sense. And then she goes away for season 4, comes back in season 5, and it's like we've forgotten about that. We've forgotten about that thing that happened at the end of. It's just under the water, even though it was built up as this big dramatic thing. And then now she's beginning to question her sexuality, and I'm like, where the hell is this coming from?
We need a storyline, people.
Exactly. It really, really felt like we need a storyline. We need something to do, and quite frankly, I'm happy it ended. I'm happy it ended because they were running out of ideas. As much as I love the show, as much as I burnt through five seasons in about 2 months, they were running out of ideas. And whatever, I love the fact that what the show represented. I love the fact that it was the first time, like had a major minority-led cast on Canadian TV. I love all of that, but they were running out of ideas. And so all in all, for all 5 seasons, obviously various seasons for the season and all that, I would give this a 3 out of 5 but mainly because I feel like towards the end, it was possibly on TV a season too long, and it was possibly, and I just think they're running out of ideas, and it's a bit of an oversight to have a show that is talking about Korean Canadian experience and not have a Korean Canadian who could take over from one Korean Canadian to keep running the show. I think that's just like a massive dumb oversight. But all in all, Kim's Convenience, I would recommend it, and I'll give it a 3 out of 5. Definitely the first 4 seasons. But right. And so that's it. We have come to the end. And would you like to hazard a guess at who has won this week between Netflix and cinema?
I'm pretty certain it's got to be cinema.
Yes, I think it has to be cinema. It helped a lot by the Sparks documentary. Which is good, and it's been good because we've had a couple of weeks now with cinema, which has been a bit meh. So it's nice to see that we have a weekend which cinema can give us 2 separate things. You can have the silliness of the Suicide Squad, and yet the kind of art. I mean, I guess it is. No, it is definitely art of the Sparks brothers. And the documentary.
It's really worth a watch. I mean, I don't expect there's so much to watch, and people won't, but it's worth a watch, even if you don't really know them. It's a well-made movie, well-made documentary. Yeah.
All right, cool. So I would say, and I could recommend Kim's Convenience to the 2 of you. And just one thing before we go, if you're still listening at this point, thank you very much for listening to us. We have become aware recently that people actually do listen. And if you do listen, we would like to talk to you. So please do get in touch with us. I mean, talk to your friends if you like what you've heard. Tell them to subscribe on wherever they get their podcasts from. I heard of one called Podcatcher this week. I didn't know that existed. So yeah, Podcatcher, iTunes, Google, find us. We're also up on YouTube. You'll also see the videos I put up on YouTube. And get involved with the quizzes as well. Find us on Facebook. Go join our Netflix versus Cinema chat. And send us a message as to why you keep listening. Send us a message about your take on one of the things we spoke about. Whether you agree, whether you thought the Suicide Squad was a pile of steaming crap. Let us know. Let us know, and we love interacting, and we will probably give you a shout out. I think we'll definitely give you a shout out at this point in time. So anyway, until next week, it's a goodbye from me.
It's a goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye from me. And Ian Ogilvy up there as well at the back. He says goodbye.
What was the other guy called?
Nicky Henson.
Nicky Henson. Why did I have Paul Nettles in my head? Never mind. So anyway, thank you very much for joining us. We'll speak to you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.